Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Canadian Electricity Association's Conversation webinar series. The CEA is the voice of the electricity industry in Canada. My name is Farhan Mirza, and I am pleased to be your host for today's webinar. I would first like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which I'm broadcasting from today is the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. The Algonquin peoples have lived on this land since time immemorial, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to be present in this territory. I'd also like to recognize Canada as the land of the First Peoples, Inuit, and Métis. And I would like to pay homage to the Indigenous peoples, past, present, and future, that continue to work, educate, and contribute to the strength of our country. I would like to recognize that the land is shared through historic treaties, developed through contemporary treaties, and one that continues to be unceded territory. The Conversation series features presentations from CEA's corporate partners, and the series will highlight a variety of Canadian and international solutions to current and future challenges faced by our industry. Working with CEA's corporate partners, these webinars have been developed to be of specific interest to those working in the electric utility space from generation through to the customer. For a list of upcoming sessions, please check out CEA's website at electricity.ca. Before we get started today, there are a few housekeeping items that I'd like to go over. Our session today is scheduled to run from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Questions can be asked, and we'd encourage you to do so as they come to mind by typing them into your questions function to the right of your screen. They will be asked at the end of the presentation as time permits. And a brief survey will be sent to webinar participants following the session today. We very much appreciate your candid feedback and are interested in any topics you would like to have included in the conversation series in the future. Please keep an eye out for future webinars and events through CEA's monthly newsletter, Current Affairs. With over 6,000 subscribers, Current Affairs, much like the national newspaper, is the place to go for Canadian industry news as we connect the national value chain from generation to the customer. If you'd like to receive Current Affairs, you can subscribe to the free publication by going on CEA's website, again, at electricity.ca. Today, Util-Assist will be presenting on how AI-powered analytics is helping utilities unlock the value of AMI. In today's session, we will learn how some of the best performing utilities are leveraging AI-powered insights from smart meters to lower costs, reduce risk, and define the next frontier of customer experience. Discover the full scope of what's possible, including appliance level usage predictions, fault identifications for enhanced customer engagement, proactive alerts for lower bills, and insights to the impacts of EV adoption, just to name a few. You'll also hear from Grid 4C on practical applications for innovations in data science and AI from Constellation Energy on how it has applied these cutting-edge insights to transform customer experience, extend service offerings, and grow revenues. Util-Assist will share on how utilities are integrating new digital innovations and provide tips to embark on your own analytics initiative. To take us through today's presentation, I'd like to welcome Isa Qureshi, Chief Business Development Officer at Util-Assist, Mike Strano, Chief Customer Officer at Util-Assist, Dr. Noah Ramini, Founder and CEO of Grid 4C, and Michael Waisgrass, Executive Director, Innovation Growth and Digital at Constellation. Welcome everybody to the Conversation series, and Isa, I'll turn the floor over to you to start us off.
Thank you very much, Farhan. I'd like to start by thanking each of you for your time this afternoon, or if you might be joining us from the West Coast, good morning. And I believe that in the next hour or so, you really have an opportunity to learn from expert speakers who are living and breathing data and analytics on a day-to-day basis within the utility industry. My name is Isa Qureshi. I'm the Chief Business Development Officer at Util-Assist. This is a very flattering photo that is on the slide here, maybe 15 years old. But I'm joined today by Dr. Noah Ramini, Mr. Michael Waisgrass, and my peer, Mike Strano. And what we're essentially going to attempt to do is provide you with data, with real-world examples of how you can accelerate your both customer-facing and utility operations-facing operations using data analytics, artificial intelligence, and predictive analytics. Just a brief background on Util-Assist. We were founded in 2005. We're based in Newmarket, Ontario. For those of you not familiar with Newmarket, it's essentially in the northwest corridor of the GTA. We've been working with utilities across electric, water, and gas throughout our entire company history, and very specifically helping them with initiatives around smart grid. We work with utilities across both the Canadian and US markets, and really what one of our mandates is as an organization is to help our utility customers through their AMI and smart grid journeys, and more specifically help them realize the full value of their AMI investments. We're going to talk about today how many utilities have spent the capital, have spent the time to roll out smart meters or AMI networks, but really have only touched the tip of the iceberg in terms of the full value that they're providing back into their business. So I'm very excited about the presentation today, to be joined by specifically our partner Grid4C. We identified the need to provide advanced solutions, packaged solutions to the utility industry, not ones that would require a custom development at each and every project, but one where we could have a good, strong starting point to help our customers get started with advanced analytics. And so Util-Assist made a strategic investment, as well as declared a partnership with Grid4C in January of 2020. This is a very exciting organization, and we'll get to hear what we are doing together in the market. This slide might resonate with some of you to see what are the business drivers and challenges that you're undergoing and facing today within your business. There are tremendous pressures around cost management, reliability. There are external threats around cybersecurity. There's a need for grid optimization, energy efficiency, and revenue protection. And so these are just several business drivers and pressures that utilities are facing today. They faced these similar challenges yesterday, and these will continue to be ongoing challenges going forward. So we believe that many utilities have the data, have the resources available already within their toolkit to be able to address and further many of these challenges and opportunities. How so? By the use of analytics, and we're going to hear about that, as I said, a little bit further on. This slide here is just really talking about how with AMI, we've seen an exponential growth of smart meter data. Utilities are sitting on vast sums of data relevant to the usage of the grid, as well as the utilities' end customers. As I said earlier, AMI helps unlock real-time insights. And just finally, as I wrap here, I talked about the iceberg and the tip of the iceberg. So many of you who have already embarked on the AMI journey will be doing things like automated meter reading, will have optimized your workforce, so on and so forth. But that really only is the tip of the iceberg. With advanced AI and predictive analytics solutions, such as from Grid4C, there are tremendous additional opportunities to use analytics to drive additional benefit back to your business. At this point, I'm going to stop speaking. That's enough from me. I'd like to hand over to Dr. Noah Ramini of Grid4C.
Thank you so much, Isa. So I'm Noah Ramini, and I'm the founder and CEO of Grid4C. Also a PhD in AI and machine learning, and I founded the company back in 2013 when the vision was to use AI to extract maximum business value for utilities using those smart meter reads. I'm happy to say that today we're analyzing billions of meter reads from 4 different continents, analyzing generating billions of predictions every day for leading utilities all over the world. And we're also been fortunate to be ranked as leader in this field. Next slide, please. So this is kind of a slide showing the many use cases and the emerging AI opportunities, use cases that AI, the combination of AI and smart meter reads can address and can solve for utilities. And the way that we approached it was developing this plug and play engine that takes into account historical meter reads together with weather data, customer data, whatever can be relevant, and start generating load forecasts at the meter level, 24 hours in advance, even a year in advance, sub-hourly forecasts. And these predictions, these forecasts can be aggregated to the transformer feeder level, grid asset level, to start predicting issues and faults on the grid, and also disaggregated automatically to the behind the meter, to the appliance level, to help even predict issues and problems inside the home, detect early warnings of anomalies, and so on. The way that we kind of build or kind of classify these 3 different classes of solutions. Next slide, please. So the first class of insights is the predictive operational analytics. So looking at the grid side and making predictions for the operational side of the business. Starting from the predictive load research and forecasting, solar forecasting, very granular solar forecasting, and going into demand response simulation and optimization, because we not only predict at the meter level, but also can predict, for example, the curtailable load, the sheddable load, and start simulating all kinds of scenarios. Grid asset fault detection is another very important use case. And then the electric vehicle optimization, so the ability to predict when people will charge electric vehicle and identify the clusters, the load profiles of EV charging patterns of different homes, helps us even optimize the scheduling and suggest an optimized scheduling, and provide very important insights in advance and warnings that affect the grid. Next slide, please. The second class of insights, we call it the predictive customer analytics. That's utility-facing insights about their customers, starting from the fact that we take historical meter reads and start clustering, or the algorithm automatically clusters and finds load profiles and different load patterns. And then also clusters the behind the meter, so the appliance level load profiles. And based on that, you can start slicing and dicing for the purpose of targeting, for energy efficiency, for marketing offerings. So you could look and slice and dice and select customers based on the ownership of appliances, based on the saving potential, because we also detect inefficient appliances, based on the specific load profile, based on propensity models, for rate design optimization, understanding even the probability of a customer to accept a certain offering. So really providing the next best offer whenever a customer approaches us, and even proactively kind of optimizing the approach while approaching the customer and building that one-to-one segment. Next slide, please. The third kind of class is what we call the AI consumer-facing insights. So this is what the customers see. And other than the kind of what we hear a lot about the appliance load disaggregation, so of course the itemized usage is something that customers love. But what we find that engage them the most are the very personalized insights about things that we detect that are going wrong in their home. As a data scientist, I believe that AI makes the most value when you're able to prevent something or predict something that's going to fail, and you can prevent that from happening. And we've built very unique insights around that, very unique alerts. First type of alert is where we detect behavioral anomalies. So we're predicting the behavior, we're predicting the usage, and once there's a deviation from the predicted usage, we start kind of tracking that to see if something is wrong and to alert the customer, even quantify how much that deviation is costing them, and automatically identify the signature of that to understand what's going wrong if it's a specific appliance. The second type of alert is when we're clustering identical customers based on their load profile, the appliance ownership, based on the location, the dwelling type, and then start comparing the usage of the appliances. So you're compared to your own cluster to customers that are exactly like you. And if we're detecting that one of the appliances, the usage is an outlier in terms of comparing that to the other people in your cluster, we will know that either you're using it very inefficiently or it is inefficient. It's still not enough for us to say that you need a technician, but something is going wrong. Then the third type of alert, and that's the one that is generating most value for consumers and for utilities, even generating revenue streams for consumers, is our ability to detect, to predict, and to diagnose faulty appliances. So we have trained classifiers that just scan the meter reads and are able to detect inefficient or faulty HVACs, electric heating, water heaters, pool pumps, refrigerators, and we're even able to quantify how much that inefficiency is costing you. Based on this specific insight, we have, and Mike Waitsgrass from Constellation Energy is going to talk about exactly how Constellation Energy is using that to provide, to send trucks to their customers with technicians to fix that. So consumers are experiencing a very unique customer experience and a very engaging one. We're also providing, of course, predictive time of use alerts, smart thermostat optimization. So if you also get the smart thermostat reads, we're able to simulate the effect of different simulations or different settings, how that affects your bill. Next slide, please. Last, I wanted to provide a few tips. I hope I still have time on how to drive maximum value out of AI projects. And I'm putting on my data scientist hat now, kind of to explain the different language that data scientists speak. The first one is to align the business objective with the matrix, with the accuracy measures. That's the two first points, meaning it's really important that the data scientist understands what my target, what my profit or the use case or my profit function. And I can give so many examples. For example, when I tell a data scientist that I want accurate load forecast, what he actually hears is that it's a symmetrical function. He hears that the penalty for overestimating or underestimating the load is exactly identical, is exactly the same. If that's not the case, if we have a different profit function, he needs to know because the results of the algorithm will be completely different. Another example is when Michael Waitsgrass was going to talk about sending trucks, about our ability to detect and predict faults of appliances. If Constellation Energy is sending technicians and trucks based on those insights, it means that the false positives and the false negatives do not have the same weight or the same importance. Because sending a technician if it turns out to be a false alarm or what we call a false positive, that's very expensive. Versus just not identifying the false negative means we're not identifying a faulty appliance. That is not that crucial. So a data scientist needs to understand that. And the results will affect the results because there's a trade-off between the false positives and the false negatives. So that's just a few examples. I can provide many. The third point is always prefer transparent algorithms. We data scientists, we love deep learning algorithms. We love neural networks. The deep learning algorithms is an example of a black box algorithm. No one really understands how the algorithm reached a certain decision. Transparent algorithms actually show you whether it's a decision tree or show you the importance of the different parameters. And from our experience, users always trust those more. It's easier for you as a user to, or as a manager, to trust the decision of an algorithm when you understand how it reached a certain conclusion. So if you can, ask the data scientists to prefer transparent algorithms if possible, of course. And then the fourth point is really no need to reinvent the wheel. There's so many open source algorithms out there, so many startups and companies that analyze millions of meters from all over the world. So really easier to plug and play those solutions. Thank you so much. I'm honored to hand over now to Mike Waitsgrass of Constellation Energy. Thank you.
Thank you, Noah. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Sure can.
All right, perfect. I just wanted to do a sound check first of all. So first of all, as Noah said, I'm Mike Waitsgrass from Constellation, and I'd very much like to thank the CEA, Util-Assist, and Grid4C for inviting me to join you today. I'm very excited to be here. A little bit about Constellation. We're a leading competitive energy company in the United States. We provide power, natural gas, and renewable energy and other energy management products and services for homes and businesses across the United States. We also provide a host of integrated solutions with those same products to help customers strategically buy, manage, and use their energy. My role at Constellation, as indicated by the title, is around innovation and growth activities. I'm charged with developing new products and services and channels that are directly related to our core energy business or have close adjacencies, like our partnership with Grid4C for customer consumable insights and analytics, home services, and IoT. As all of you are probably aware, energy, and in particular competitive retail energy, is often challenged to develop meaningful and impactful relationships with our customers. So developing relevancy in our customer relationships has been a strategic objective of ours for the past several years. And we define that relevancy as the frequency and meaningfulness of our interactions with our customers. And what we've been doing with Grid4C fits very nicely into that objective. So with respect to utilizing smart meter data that we have access to, we performed a lot of due diligence in the market before selecting Grid4C as our strategic partner in this space. And what we were looking for, as I'm sure many of you are, was best-in-class AI that would allow us to provide customers with accurate energy insights and efficiency analysis and fault detection on major appliances, most notably the HVAC systems, which is the largest consumer of energy in most homes. We were also benefiting, as Noah said, by the ability to dispatch technicians through our HVAC services business and to provide IoT devices that can help enable the homeowner to control how they use energy. And this program is available in multiple markets, multiple of our markets in the United States, and it's available to both new and existing customers. So we've been able to do a lot of cross-selling and upselling to existing customers and also attract new customers as a result. I believe the moderator will be putting a link to our commercial that we run in several markets that you can view at your leisure after the webinar. So many of us deal with questions from customers that are reflective of real problems that they're dealing with in their daily lives around their energy usage, and they're looking for us to help them solve those problems. So we all get questions about why smart meters? Is my HVAC working efficiently, and do I need services? We get many questions on high bills and usage and how we can help them manage that. And there's also a lot of interest in devices that are in the home, the thermostat, how to optimize the thermostat, as well as other smart home devices. And then, of course, there's the regulators who constantly challenge us to deliver more customer value as a result of the investments that we're making in smart grid technologies. So I think that there's a whole host of issues and problems that we look to solve. And I'll walk you through it, an example of how we address that. So on the next slide, we think of this as a journey. First, we provide basic energy account management capabilities and insights, bill payment, bill prediction, monitoring alerts, things like that. We are then able to introduce other opportunities through our home services business, as Noah mentioned, so tune-ups, maintenance, repair, and replacement. And we're experimenting with smart home capabilities, as I alluded to earlier, that provide automation, energy management, and security applications. And all of this collectively creates a platform for customer engagements that help us to increase our relevancy in that relationship, as I alluded to earlier. So let me walk you through a couple of customer-facing examples that we have in the market today. So, Noah talked about, the technology and how it enables these things, but what we include in either email or in an app that we've recently launched is, the bill prediction, which is very helpful for customers, especially those who are managing their energy spend closely. Load disaggregations that help customers understand how they're using their energy. Again, the diagnostics, which has been a real game changer for us in terms of delivering unexpected value. The feedback that we get from this capability has been phenomenal. And we're able to bundle all of this value, all of these insights and analytics and fault detection along with the services into the energy rate. especially in markets like Texas, where we bill the customer directly. And then we're also able to monetize this through other products and services. A small example is and a very easily integrated example is things like filter subscriptions. So all in all, it's a very comprehensive end-to-end customer engagement platform. I'll walk you through some of the results, of this. So we've seen incredible increases in engagement from our email communications, whether that's weekly, monthly, and as I mentioned, our app. Open rates is a leading indicator, but we've also seen a material impact on retention and net promoter score. So customer retention, and I recognize that this is in a competitive environment, and so those in a regulated environment have different metrics, but I think that these metrics go, they tell a good story about customer satisfaction. So our customer retention for customers that we offer this to is 20 points higher than those we don't, which is a material impact on our bottom line. The NPS, the Net Promoter Score, is also higher. It's about 5 points higher. So in a competitive environment, as I mentioned, this translates to measurable positive impacts on the business. But in a regulated environment, it includes lower customer support costs, fewer complaints, and an overall increase in satisfaction that customers exhibit, towards the energy company. So just in closing on the last slide, and I'm happy to answer more questions about this in the Q&A, but starting with the capabilities that Grid4C has enabled for us, we've been able to deliver this end-to-end customer experience that's not only paying dividends to our bottom line, but is actually changing the nature of our relationship with customers in ways that allow us to solve real problems and create lasting value. It's been a best-in-class service in the industry. We've delivered best-in-class customer metrics against our competitors, and we've seen a lot of value as a result of this program. So I'll end it there, but again, I'm happy at the end to answer any specific questions about the program, and thank you again for having me.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for having me as well. Going to talk through this last slide here. The good news is one slide left to go through.
Seems as if Mike is having some technical issues there from his side. I think he's just frozen. There we go. Mike, you just froze out there for a second. If you'd like to unmute yourself and try again. There we go. Perfect. Good to go. All right.
Okay. Okay, I'm not sure how much of that you heard, but here to talk about governance for a few minutes. So, and I'll try do my best to reiterate a couple of points from Noah, Isa, and Mike as well as we go through the slide here. So, primarily talking about governance. So, what do we mean when we say governance in analytics? So, one of the things that we like to work with customers that want to get started with analytics is an enterprise information management strategy. Analytics is something that you do not want to try and experiment in without a strategy and a plan, and learning about some of the best practices that have been established out there. And many of those best practices would be wrapped up in an enterprise information management strategy. And the rest of the bullets on that first bar there are pieces that you would find in an enterprise information management strategy. Things like a reference architecture. Within a reference architecture document, you would be documenting your integrations with AMI, for example, and how your different pieces of technology are accessing information and storing it and moving your data around the organization. And so having that all documented and in place, it will be tremendously helpful as you start your journey. Within a reference architecture, you definitely want to capture the system of record for the different pieces of information that you have and that you want to start using in your analytics. Another piece in there would be change control. Change control would be largely centered around things like technology changes in your production environment. But as you start to share information around your organization through the use of analytics, being very careful about how you implement production changes is a super important piece of your governance strategy, and finding better ways to manage change and mitigate the risk of unintended consequences as you change your production systems will go a long ways towards protecting your data and your information and making sure that there is strong data integrity. We've heard Noah talk about AI and machine learning, and of course those more advanced pieces of the analytics journey will require your data to be clean if you want to get good outcomes and good predictions. You're going to have to feed the analytics the right information, and it has to have integrity. So that's a little bit about getting your data in order. And as you would want to go through that, you'd want to define the steps of your journey. We believe that analytics, that journey should be use case driven and can be self-funding in a lot of cases. If you are doing a good job of finding use cases that provide real business benefit, and you can start to build out a model to capture your business case benefits as well as the cost of implementing the analytic, and making sure that as you build out your use case library, that you're really concentrating on ones that definitely provide a return for that investment. Because what enterprise information management is all about is treating your information assets as the other important assets at the utility. You keep your substation equipment and your transformers in a special spot, and make sure that they're protected and taken care of, and that life cycle for those assets is well understood. And so enterprise information management makes sure that you're treating your data assets in the same way that you would treat your other important assets at the utility. So you want to treat them the same way. In that way, you would want to treat them, like any other asset. Procurement, for example, where you would want to have that driven by business case and benefits. And so the same thing in an analytics journey. You would want to be careful that you're not creating new reporting that is just on a fancier UI rather than out of the box operational reporting from one of your systems that you already have in place. So, and that's the importance of mapping out the journey, and the strategy is trying to make sure that everything that you want to do really does have a return for the utility. So, most of what I've said so far is really concentrated on information, and we believe that that's how you need to start your journey. Getting involved in analytics is probably tempting to jump into the procurement of new technology, but you want to be careful about doing that, because as I said, data integrity needs to be central to what you're trying to do. And so you need to step back a little bit before you select technology. But some of the big pieces of technology that we're seeing today, just to talk to it a little bit, data lake is probably becoming, the go-to, a little bit more prevalent these days. And the difference between a data lake and a data warehouse, or some of the more traditional technologies there. Data lake is a piece of technology that supports unstructured data, so data that's not in rows and columns. Data like geospatial information or social media, for example, right? You could perform analytics against Twitter messages to find out your customers' perceived outage experience, or their perceived experience of outage situations, for example. Right, so you can bring unstructured data into a data lake, and so there are certainly utility use cases that would require unstructured data, and so we tend to see the movement towards data lake and cloud and mobile technologies, all of that being wrapped up in this. You saw some great screens from both Michael and Noah there about mobile applications and other types of reporting there, and data lake certainly supports all of that stuff. The final point there, kind of reiterating some of the stuff that Noah said. You want to run down and build out a roadmap and strategy, but we shouldn't be trying to reinvent the wheel. Everybody doesn't need to build their own analytic and then find out that their neighbors have just spent the same time and money building the same analytic. There are partners like Grid4C that have done this, And so what you want to try and think about is how to structure the data lake, for example, so that you can work with a partner to bring their applications into your data lake and run it against the data that's already residing in your instance, rather than exporting information back out of your data lake to give to a vendor. So there's some considerations around architecture that you want to think about at the front end of your journey. Of course, you don't want to get too far down the path, for example, of an on-premise solution, and then find out that it would be much cheaper and easier to work in the cloud, where a third party could come in and install an application that performs an analytic for you. And that goes, of course, back to the business case, right? If it's cheaper to secure a partner like a Grid4C, for example, that can bring in a proven piece of technology, it's probably, if it's proven and it's out in the industry being used, it's probably going to be cheaper than building it again yourselves, right? And there's of course lessons learned by these different partners that are building these things and making them available to the customers. So that's getting through the slide. Just try to think about, anticipate some other questions as we sort of wrap up here. Try to think about a starting point. So literally, what would we say should be a first step to getting started? I think the first step is sitting down and thinking about how to create or have somebody help you with an enterprise information management strategy. That would be the first step towards getting your data in order. These strategy documents do not need to be complicated. They do not need to be big, and they do not need to be expensive. They need to capture some best practices around data integrity and governance. And then, typically an enterprise information management strategy would be implemented project by project. So, thinking of change control, for example, if you have not gone through your AMI deployment, implement the change control piece of EIM in your AMI project. And then, if your utility is moving on to another big implementation like an ADMS system, you implement all those practices again through that project until, eventually every department within the utility are following these same best practices. And then with those in place, you'll feel much more comfortable and confident that an analytics journey will be successful for you. Thinking about how to start you've now made the decision to start an analytics path and begin to develop use cases. What would be the first step there? I think it's a little different because you've already now put in place some of the best practices around governance like EIM. The first step in actually starting to build out some of the analytics that you might be interested in, we believe and advocate for data modeling. Data modeling can help you understand the scope of your data and start to help you understand what use cases are possible out there. Knowing what data you have, what your system of record is, and starting to go through a modeling exercise and define use cases in that way. We believe that to be an important first step, data modeling. We've heard, other opinions out in the industry that data modeling isn't necessary at times, but we've seen where it's been a skipped step in the process that can increase your chances of having to do rework further down the road. And data modeling really mitigates that risk. So I feel like that's a great first step once you've decided on some use cases that you want to implement. I think we're about at time now, so I'll stop talking here and open up for questions. So we just, as the final slide in the deck, included some contact information for the speakers today. Would love to hear from you and answer more questions outside of this venue if that's required. And I think we're about to open the Q&A session then.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mike. That was really great. And to all of our panelists for their wonderful discussion. I'd like to invite everybody to come back on camera as we kick off the Q&A. And to our audience, you see the questions panel. We've seen a few questions come in already. But if you do have questions, you can enter them into the questions function on your screen to the right, and we'll ask them as they do come in. And we'll wait for Isa to join us as well, and I'll kick off the Q&A with a couple that we've received from the audience. So Got a two-part question here to kick things off. What amount of data is needed for the application analysis? Is it 1 minute, 5, 15? And part B to that is, how are you receiving the high resolution data to perform this? Is it through Zigbee or something else? So anyone can take that question.
I'm happy to answer it. I mean, I think that the more granular data, the better. It can help out. But I feel like that question was probably directed at Mike or Noah. But we're seeing utilities with AMI now deploying standard, even in residential meters, 15-minute interval data, which I think really helps with things like the energy disaggregation that Noah's talked about. But I'll hand it back over to Noah or Mike there.
Sure, thank you. As a data scientist, of course, the more data, the better. So we love data. The more granular, the better. But usually what we get is 15 or 30 or 60-minute reads. And then the more granular, the more accurate the insights will be. But all of the insights that I've described, we perform with 15, 30, or 60 minutes granularity. In terms of the historical data, a few weeks of data is enough to provide more insights. But then, the more data, the rule of thumb would be a year of historical data to provide optimum results. It also depends on the insight. For example, for the inefficient and fall detection, it's enough to have a week or sometimes a month of data, especially if it's summer data. So the answer is it depends. In terms of, I think it may be interesting to mention that historically we've been generating all of the insights on the cloud, on the Amazon cloud. So we get every day we get the previous day's meter reads, then we send back all the insights, or we either present the insights on our screens or just send it to utilities or partners to embed those insights into their screens. But what we've done in the past 2 years is we've partnered with leading AMI vendors, and we've worked together with them to embed the algorithms inside the meter itself. And that's where the data is much more granular, and that's where the insights are provided in real time. So exciting things that we're doing right now. We've announced those also. But we're providing the software only.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Ramani. Another question that we have, you're talking about the apps, or are the apps that you use run at the edge or against the MDM?
Did you want to take that, Noah? I think generally we've been talking sort of about the traditional approach to analytics, which is working out of the big database. But I think there are technologies available now that allow it at the edge. But Noah, did you or Mike want to speak to what you've done in the slides that were presented today?
Sure. So I think I just mentioned that, and I think it's a perfect question that I've just we've gone from the cloud, from analyzing everything on the cloud, and we're moving towards now that the smart meters, the next generation of smart meters, can enable us to run these algorithms inside as part of the meters. We're moving to the edge, and that's where the data is granular and everything is coming and going in real time.
Great, thank you again. I have another question here. Did Appliance Health and Performance Analytics require any behind the meter sensoring?
We don't do any behind the meter sensoring. It's all done through the Grid4C AI.
Okay, perfect. And did any of the AI ML algorithms incorporate use of operational flags or alerts in addition to meter or interval reads?
I can speak to that, but Noah, did you or Mike want to talk about what you guys have done there with Constellation?
No, you can go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So go ahead, Noah. Go ahead.
All we're using is AMI data. So smart meter reads, the combination of smart meter reads, weather data. That's all we need to provide all the insights that I've described. So everything I described in the slides, the fault detection, the load aggregation, the inefficiencies, predicting problems before they happen on the grid inside the home. Everything is based on 15, 30, 60-minute interval smart meter reads and weather data.
Yeah, and I could just add a little bit. I'm working with a customer today who is using their alarms and events as well as combining that data with other, master data for like customer information, for example, premise information and account information, so that you can use just, for example, tamper flags to be combined with, the account status to determine if there's unauthorized usage. This stuff is a little bit simpler. I would call this sort of a business intelligence reporting rather than analytics, which generally the term analytic would refer to predictive. But voltage alarms we've seen can be correlated and associated to device failures as well, and so that can become a predictive piece. But yeah, there are definitely use cases that require events and alarms. They're a bit different than the ones that Mike and Noah talked about today.
Excellent. I think we have a follow-up to the question earlier. How will this work in specific to Ontario utilities, as MDM is with IESO?
Yeah, that's a good question, right? I think a lot of it's been a couple of years since I was tied in too tightly to Ontario, but when we had helped a lot of the Ontario customers roll out their AMI, many of those customers saw that the centralized system were not going to store things like events and alarms, voltage information, current, other pieces of data that you can get from the AMI network. And so they implemented an operational data store to store some of that information. So if you've got an operational data store that is housing that information, then some of that stuff can certainly be kicked off. I'm not sure if anybody's tried to work with the MDMR and access the data that way, or whether they've started their own discussions around using the data that they've been storing for a few years now to enable some of these analytics. I'm not sure.
Great, thank you, Mike. Distribution utilities are experiencing significant disruption from DER on its distribution circuit. How does your solution work with a distributed grid control solution, especially volt VAR optimization?
Frank, could you just say the ending of that question again? I just missed the end of the question.
Sure, no problem. So they're asking, how does your solution work with a distributed grid control solution, especially volt VAR optimization?
Your solution, I think that means being directed at Mike or Noah. Is that?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a complementary solution. It's just doing something else with analytics. As I said, there's a very wide range of use cases that can be addressed. Specifically, that's not one of the use cases that we're solving, so complementary.
Yeah, so if Mike or Isa didn't have anything to add, the customer that we're working with today, DVO, is part of their strategy. And it kind of goes back to the data modeling and the reference architecture, right? Understanding how you've integrated your AMI data with other systems. VVO would, this is a function that some of the ADMS systems today perform. And so, many customers would manage that program through a system like ADMS, but it absolutely can be brought into the same, and managed through analytics by bringing all that smart meter data into the cloud or wherever you want to store it, and then starting to run analytics against it and create exceptions that might be then consumed by an ADMS or some other system, right? So it gets back to getting the data in order, modeling it out, and understanding the scope of all of the pieces that you want to do, and thinking about the use cases and what the return on those are, and then prioritizing that into a roadmap. And some of these pieces, theft or whatever, these ones provide very simple business cases, right? Very easy to generate. And so VVO, I think, is another one. But you're asking a good question, because many of these initiatives, if allowed to begin in silos within a department in the utility, then you can end up creating sort of conflicting or redundant solutions. You know, if a piece of the utility had some funding that they wanted to experiment with analytics and did that within their silo without, you know, taking an enterprise approach, you may end up finding that, you know, you've got multiple solutions across the utility doing very similar things. And that's, I guess, you know, another piece of that governance. So we think that this should not be something that individual business units within the utility start to do in and of themselves or uniquely. You know, they should be working at the enterprise level to make sure that there is not redundancy built, because there are just simply too many technology solutions available today. And so you want to figure out the best way to use your information without creating, you know, redundancy. So it's a great question, and I think it speaks to the enterprise nature of what we want to try and get across here, is that, you know, you got to be careful that you don't start small and then, you know, a couple of weeks later find out that somebody else in your same organization has also started, and you're building, you know, very similar things. So we believe, you know, and we believe it should be an enterprise initiative, probably funded outside of individual business units, that sort of thing, right? So.
Great, thank you. A lot of great questions coming in still, so I'll keep going here. Have predicted results been compared against actual results post-event to measure accuracy of predictions?
I can talk about it from the fault detection perspective. I mean, we did a lot of due diligence on this, and we found very high accuracy rates. So the issue that Noah alluded to about false positives, we haven't experienced, you know, any material in that respect. We've seen some, you know, some really good results, and you know, as I said, we have send people on site when there's fault detections that the customer requests assistance on, and we've seen some very good results from that.
Awesome, thank you, Mike. And we have a question asking if your solution's fully deployed at any of utilities here, or is it, you know, so if it's not just a pilot, is it fully deployed anywhere?
I'm guessing it's our solution. I think that.
Sure, yeah, Dr. Rooney.
Yeah. For many utilities in the US, now going into Canada, and I think Constellation Energy is just one example of many, both in the deregulated and regulated markets. We started, the R&D is located in Israel. We started in Israel and Europe, and went into the US, Australia, Hong Kong. So yes, at scale. Analyzing, as I said, millions of meters, billions of meter reads from since 2013.
Very good. And Isa, a question for you. Where does funding and responsibility for analytics reside in most utilities? Is it in each department? Is it an IT, or is it a corporate initiative?
Thank you for the question. This is the question we are often asked by the utility. So where should it live? Really, since we talked about data, Mike mentioned data being a critical and core asset of your business. We like to say that data is the most important asset of your company after your employees and your staff. And so it should be viewed as an enterprise initiative. Your first step from an internal business management perspective is to source and appoint an executive sponsor for your data initiatives. And IT will absolutely have a critical role to play in your overall data and analytics strategy. We talked about some of the underlying foundational technologies that will help enable an end solution across your business units. So IT will absolutely play a role in that. But really, your data strategy, as I've mentioned, should be viewed as an enterprise strategy with an executive champion. Typically, what we're seeing in the utilities is that executive champion lives within the business side, not the IT side, and IT is a stakeholder at the table to help enable these solutions. I hope that helps answer the question.
No, I think that's really good, Isa, because I'm glad you sort of differentiated between business users and IT there. I think IT is definitely at the table, right? But as part of the governance, for example, data definitions are super important, right? Defining your data and what that means, and of course that's most often going to require heavy business involvement to make sure that there's clarity in all of the pieces of data that we're managing and things like that. Yeah, business involvement is definitely critical.
Right, and then just to extend that, you might say, okay, well, who from the business should be the owner? In our Grid4C solution set, we have an entire solution set that is end customer, consumer facing. So one might think your head of customer service, customer experience, that's becoming more of a defined role and function in the utility today, would be the chief sponsor, or within the core operations of the utility. So the folks that run the operations, control room, so on and so forth, for really the utility operations and the grid asset side of things. Again, I'll draw from experience. One of our key clients, in fact, Mike is working with this client in the US, in the south of the US right now. They appointed the smart grid AMI lead of the utility on the business side to be the data analytics lead, because they really were going to see the starting point for their analytics solutions originating from their AMI and smart grid business. But from there, once you let the cat out of the bag, you're going to have folks from finance and marketing and customer service that are going to say, hold on, can I get this kind of insight as well? So I think, as you plan to embark on this journey, if you can get the topmost executive sponsorship and support from the utility, that will only help your cause as you roll these solutions out.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Isa, for that question, for that response. It seems that we're running close to time, so we'll end the Q&A there. Again, I'd really like to thank everybody here on the panel for your time and that very thoughtful discussion, and to our audience for sending your questions in. Before we wrap up the session today, I'd like to remind everybody of our upcoming webinars on the conversation series. On June 24th, next week, MNP will be joining us to talk about cyber risk assessments after an incident and building cyber resilience and defensibility while transitioning to a more secure environment. Then we will move on to July 8th. Plug and Drive will showcase their online tool on finding your EV match and how to help your customers understand the total cost of ownership. And a reminder again, all of CEA's future events and webinars can be found in our monthly newsletter on current affairs or on the news and events section on our website at electricity.ca. Again, a thank you to Util-Assist and Constellation and Grid4C for joining us today. This concludes today's session. Everybody stay safe, and we'll talk to you next time. Have a great day. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.